All right, good afternoon, evening, good morning to everyone. It's 1 p.m. on my watch, so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar is Making Metrics Actionable, Understanding SharePoint 2013, Usage and Adoption. I'm Yari Negri, and our guest today is Joel Olson. Before we begin, I just want to start out with a brief agenda. We'll start out with a very short introduction. That'll include the agenda and some housekeeping items. We'll then jump right into the action and talk about how we can make metrics actionable. We'll then continue to a demonstration of how we can create those metrics and see the data, understand what's going on within our SharePoint environment. And finally, at the end, we'll conclude with a summary and, most important, get to any questions you have and hopefully have a nice discussion towards the end of our webinar. As for housekeeping, the webinar will be recorded, or it is currently being recorded, and we'll send out an email to everyone who signed up with a link to the recording. Next, we'll be on Twitter. You can use the hashtag SPMetrics if you want to tweet. And of course, you can tweet us at Cardilog and at Joel Olson. And of course, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to enter them in the GoToWebinar panel. There should be a questions or a chat box there. And then towards the end of our webinar, we'll answer all of your questions. So what's today's webinar all about? It's about portal analytics and the idea of what we can do with web analytics. I just want to start out by sharing with you some of the questions that web analytics can really help us answer. And these can include things like who's using the portal, what's being used, what's not in use, maybe just as important, what are folks downloading, what are they searching for, what can't they find, and really help us answer all of these many unknowns about our portal. And I think the goal of web analytics is to help us build stronger portals. We see that many organizations are spending a lot of time and effort and resources into the SharePoint environment, but they're not sure to say, is the portal actually being used, how is it being used, and is it in line with the goals for which we built that environment? So what we can do with analytics is evaluate exactly how it's being used. We can actually monitor the usage and go back and enhance if the way the portal is being used isn't in line with our goals. So that's the quick background about what we're going to talk about during today's webinar. Our guest today is Joel Olson. He, of course, is a SharePoint evangelist. Recognized as #1 SharePoint influencer by Forbes.com. He was voted most popular SharePoint blog in 2012. And also has a blog, The Global Epic Traveler, where he's traveled throughout 130 countries. Joel, good afternoon. Thanks for joining today.
Hey, thank you. It's great to join you on this webcast. I always love engaging the community and being able to talk about topics I'm really passionate about. And web analytics is actually something that I've been caring about ever since I started really digging into the internet. And I would say it's been a passion of mine for over, man, I'm getting old. It seems like it's 15 plus years.
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember a time on IIS2 and trying to, understand the IIS logs and using IIS log parser and some of these old tools, just trying to get metrics. And it really is amazing what you can get out of the logs, and that's gotten better and better with each new web platform and with SharePoint as well. There's a lot of surprises with each version of the product in terms of where they put emphasis on usage, and SharePoint 2013 is definitely one where there's been a lot of changes, and so this is a very timely topic, and hope to dig in on some of that today.
Perfect. So definitely I think that there's a really amazing trend moving from what we used to do with parsing logs and up to where we've arrived. Definitely very fascinating. But please, let's go ahead and jump right into things.
Yeah. So I was actually looking for some really important quotes or something that I could kind of speak to. And one of the ones that really jumped out at me was this: you can't improve what you don't measure. And I think that captures the essence of why I feel like metrics are important. It's a lot about, creating benchmarks and understanding how are you supposed to understand adoption if you don't understand what kind of usage you get today. And I think adoption is something that goes beyond just how many visits and how many visitors you get, because all it takes is someone putting a timekeeping app on your intranet that then all of a sudden saturates your user base. So it really is important to be able to drill in and understand behaviors and understand what devices are they using to connect with and what's that real user experience. And so when I talk about usage and web analytics, I'm really talking about behavior and how we measure behavior. And as well, when you start talking about business value planning and ROI, and are you unlocking the value of SharePoint? I think a lot of people, if you said, hey, do you know how your SharePoint environment is being used, they really can't honestly answer that question. They may be able to tell you how many sites they have, or they may be able to tell you, basic numbers of visitors and that kind of thing. But when you're really trying to understand your adoption and trying to understand planning the next version, even just where are you at and where are you planning to go to build your roadmap, analytics and metrics are really, really important in your planning. And yeah, there you go. Just trying to get the slides to cooperate. There we go. Even just the average user, it's trying to understand. The average user is kind of on one end of the spectrum saying, if it doesn't work on my device, it's not worth my time. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's someone saying, why would the IT team waste their time spending any thought on mobile devices? What a ridiculous thing. The intranet is of no use on a mobile device. You really need to be able to have the ammo and the metrics to be able to back you up when you go do your enterprise mobile device management strategies around SharePoint. If you just simply go to those meetings with, hey, people on the internet say that it's important that I should focus on enterprise mobile strategies or that I should be thinking about mobile devices, they're going to say, well, they're immediately going to come back to you and say, well, what does that mean to our company? And you need to back it up. And a lot of that is putting the story together that says, these are the devices that are being used inside of our company. And this is our strategy for being able to support those. You've heard about the bring your own device strategy, but a lot of this is the bring it from your own home, bringing your own device, and not just being able to support any random device. Sorry about the background noise. All right, so I think as well, some of the other scenarios you should be thinking about are things like, on the internet, people think about e-commerce, and they think about things like, we're selling products, how much product are we selling, and analytics in those scenarios is the world. It means business or no business to those folks. Well, what does it mean on the intranet? What does it mean to your corporation when you're talking about users and what they're trying to get? Well, often in an intranet, your IT team or a consulting group has spent a lot of money on putting out applications on top of your intranet. It may be new UI. It may be a new news gadget. It may be some new gamification, like the new Badgeville app, for example, for SharePoint. There's a lot of examples of trying to understand engagement and trying to create engagement on your intranet. And so it's a lot about trying to understand what is it, what are your goals, what is fulfillment? And a lot of it is, well, how are people using it? What are the documents that are stored there? What are those sites that are there, and how are they being used? And ultimately, it's things like understanding maturity. You know, it's understanding where things are going. So what I've done is I've put together a lot of the kind of popular metrics with the idea of not just asking a bunch of questions, but being able to answer some of those things in relation to some of the metrics that you've got access to. So for example, some of the things I want to cover today is this set of things. And I don't want to go through them bullet by bullet, but a lot of this is in relation to the revolutions that are going on. The mobile revolution and how it's impacting enterprises. The browser wars and how that impacts the intranet. And I've actually done some analysis of my own of what's going on with these things, and I wanted to share those with you. And I've been sharing a few of them over the last week on my blog, SharePointJoel.com. So let's dig in on browsers and the operating system, which is one of the first things that you'll start when you start digging in on analytics. What's really interesting about browsers and operating system in relation to SharePoint is that in relation to support for operating systems, SharePoint 2013 has the best support yet for Macintosh. It has the best support yet for iOS and best support yet for Android. But when you start talking about the analytics that are actually in SharePoint 2013, even a basic browser and operating system report are no longer in there by default. So I know I'm presenting a challenge for you, but I hope by the end of this you'll understand some of the options you've got available to you. So what the first screen you're seeing there with the top browsers report, you're seeing SharePoint 2010 report, and you can see the usage of Firefox and Safari and so on, and the percentage that's used inside, that's used in relation to this intranet that we're looking at. In 2010, you've got reports like top pages, top visitors, top destinations, and that really was the gist of what you got for 2010. Pretty much any analytics tool that you use is going to be able to give you some of that basic operating system and browser metrics. But the real challenge in terms of how you make this actionable is understanding what is your browser standard inside of your company. Now, I think the majority of people would say, especially if we asked them 1 year, 2 years ago, they would say Internet Explorer, and they may say 8 or they may say 9. Now, what's changed and what's really interesting here is how Chrome has really grown. And the usage of Chrome has grown, especially in the consumer space, but even in the corporate space, Chrome and Firefox have really been eating it up. In terms of operating systems, a lot of understanding in terms of Mac versus Windows versus iOS and Android, it really is important to understand what is on those machines that are accessing your intranet or your portal, your sites. And one of the major reasons I bring this up is in terms of actionable metrics. When your designers and developers are building apps, one of the first questions they're going to ask you is, well, what do we need to support? Because their strategies around being able to leverage HTML5 or their strategies around testing and QA really rely on what's available to them and what they can use. So it's really important to gather these things so that you can say, not only is this our standard, but these are the ones we support inside of our company. Not just what Microsoft supports for SharePoint, but what's a good experience for your users. Now, for engagement purposes, we've tossed a few of these ideas of some tweets that you guys could actually tweet. So for example, SharePoint 2013 is worth looking at from Chrome and Firefox. And I do agree that there's been a lot of work in SharePoint 2013 as it relates to the new browsers. And I would say even with Mac, there's a lot of reasons to take another look at SharePoint 2013 or start looking at it from what's already going on inside of your network, inside of your with usage of your portal. So there's Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and the various browsers that go along with your mobile devices. I put a few statistics in here for your usage, and this deck will be available. One of these reports here, Stats Counter, or Global Stats, is actually available as something that you can use on your intranet. This is on the internet. You can go in and customize the dates. You can customize the chart type. But what this is statistics across the globe that can give you browser, operating system. It can give you a lot of statistics in terms of what's happening on the internet at large. So these are actually rolled up statistics across all of the anywhere where a stats counter is actually used, and it's a very, very large percentage of internet statistics that are going on. And the thing that you can see here that I'm kind of pointing out is the fact that Chrome has taken over in the consumer space as the most popular browser. Now, in the corporation, I'd still say it really kind of depends on the corporation. But even when there is an Internet Explorer standard, I would say that it's important to understand what that actually means. And just because you say IE is your standard doesn't mean that HR isn't often using Firefox or that other departments aren't using Chrome. And in fact, I would say that from a technical standpoint, it's amazing to me when you start digging into it and you start finding out that even users who are really hate computers, they've got 3 browsers installed on their computers. So let's dig a little bit on mobile. Now, here you're looking at a chart. This chart actually comes from Yammer, and it's looking at SPYAM, the SharePoint Yammer community. If you're not a member of that, you should definitely join. It's yammer.com/SPYAM, SPYAM, and that's the SharePoint Yammer community. We just surpassed 3,000 users today. So that's definitely worth tweeting about. When you start digging in a little bit, you can see this community that's put together on Yammer that's kind of an opt-in, people kind of self-register, which is a really good cross-cut of the SharePoint community. Here you can actually see how are people accessing this network in terms of a web interface, through mobile devices, through desktop, and you can see 80% is through the web, 11% through mobile, and 7% desktop means there's a desktop application. And when you start looking at what are those devices people are using, surprising, 51% of people that are accessing it through mobile devices are using the iPhone. So if you have an iPhone and you're a SharePoint user, you are among good company. It's a common thing, actually, surprising, that you'll see iPhones among SharePoint folks. In terms of representation, Windows Phone does have a decent take. In fact, it's even higher than Android. Now, the reason I bring these up isn't just because, hey, I want you to understand what's going on in the Yammer community. It's because this is the type of stuff that is actionable. When you start talking about designing and you start talking about making changes, you really want to understand what are people doing? How are people using it? And don't be surprised when you first look at your mobile usage if it's less than 1%. Very, very common for the first time when you start looking at mobile traffic to notice that it's less than 1%. Now, why would I say don't be surprised? Well, a lot of that is because this story of if you have not done anything for mobile devices, you're going to have poor adoption from a mobile device. If you haven't done anything to make your site a good experience on mobile, it's probably a bad experience, and your users probably know it. They may have tried it, and that's why it may show up in your metrics, is the fact that they've tried it. And so essentially, SharePoint by default, older versions of SharePoint, poor experience, very, very poor experience, even text-based browsing experience, even for a smartphone by default. You know, I put a blog out about a year or two ago saying you have to turn off the mobile interface because even an iPhone just browsing to a SharePoint 2010 site would give you that horrible text interface. Now, in 2013, you can actually toggle between desktop mode and mobile mode, and even for your site, you can decide what's on by default. And the new contemporary view, tons better. I know that's for another session, but just want to say, SharePoint 2013 mobile experience, tons better right out of the box. Now, this is an example of the tool we're actually looking at later on, but just the idea that right out of the box with this solution, and I'll let Yaron talk to this slide.
Sure. So really just to show an example of how we can combine some of those metrics onto a single dashboard here. But I suggest we move along, Joel, as our time is a little bit pressing this afternoon.
Yeah, so a few of the things that you'd be looking at are things like what are your top sites? On Yammer, it's things like what are your top groups? And being able to understand your usage. Understanding that in the revolutions that are going on, tablet use is really increasing. Very important to understand, are your executives using iPad? Well, if they are, then you're going to want to make sure that you're doing things to address that. If people are adopting Windows 8, you really need to understand how to educate those Windows 8 users in relation to 64-bit IE, which is that default Windows 8 mode, is not a good experience with SharePoint. It's really not that great. Another kind of look at looking at mobile devices and the OS. It's actually important to look at both, and you can kind of see here that when you start digging in on Android devices, there could be a plethora of them with different screen resolution sizes and so on. And it's important to understand in this revolution, more and more people are using mobile devices to browse the web, and that also ultimately means they're going to start hitting your intranet. And some more statistics to kind of back you up. Top mobile platforms. While I showed in the Yammer community, it was kind of skewed differently than this. In the consumer world, Android is quite large in terms of usage, and the question is, what are you doing to address that? SharePoint 2013 has really done a ton to be able to support mobile devices. And while I'm not saying it's perfect, if you look across the board, across Windows, iOS, and Android, there is now support for the Android browser, Safari browser, and Explorer on latest Windows Phone and latest OSs from the various mobile devices. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is now supported, and you can build on top of that support. And this is another chart that's actually kind of a reference chart. This one is in relation to being able to understand what is supported, what isn't supported. And I want to kind of just point you to that 2013 column, and notice there's checks across the box where they're really trying to provide global support across all devices. And this is the one I think I put a lot of time and effort into this one. I tried to create more of a report card. What is the user experience? Not just is it supported, is it not supported, but give me a grade. Is it an A or is it an F? Well, I basically tried to go side by side, 2007, 2010, 2013. Now this is a guide in terms of being able to build your case for 2013 to show that, wow, you're an honors student, ultimately, if you can be running SharePoint 2013. It's got a much higher GPA overall than 2010. And a lot of people are going to be comfortable with 2010, but I want them to to understand what that means in terms of mobile support and in terms of Firefox and Chrome. While they are supported in 2010, it's important to understand what that actually they're giving up. Now, ultimately, when you start digging in on metrics, there's some other things you can find in terms of where is the user coming from, what domain are they on. If you start gathering some stuff out of Active Directory or out of your PeopleSoft databases, Siebel, SAP, wherever the data is, you can start unlocking all sorts of interesting scenarios, such as understanding how departments are using your intranet and your various sites. So as an example, and this is really kind of just a mock-up, you can understand, is it IT who's your primary user, and so it's a bunch of technical folks, or is there one department in the business, and when you start understanding those departments, you can start going to those departments and saying, how can we better serve your needs? And this also is opening the door to being able to get additional budget for doing what you need to. Because now you can go to these department heads and say, hey, we've noticed your department is using the intranet in a big way. Here's your list of sites. Here's some of the things we want to do in terms of justifying upgrade or in terms of rolling out a new application and increasing building forms and workflows and all the cool stuff you want to do. This is the kind of stuff you got to get to be able to back up your story. And as well, it's important to understand structured versus unstructured. And this is just another way of kind of representing data. But being able to kind of understand how many My Sites are out there, how many team sites, but ultimately understanding what's the usage across these departmental and divisional portals. And the more you can give those guys rich data and helping them understand, hey, we're on the same side here. You're one of our top departments. They love hearing that kind of stuff. And they're going to be much more supportive of your platform and what you want to do. So as you start drilling in on stuff, you need to start translating it to words the business understands. And some of this does mean unlocking business data and starting to create some of your own analytics. Location data can definitely be helpful in being able to work with various regions to say, hey, it looks like your region is not using intranet. And it gives them an opportunity to talk about performance, review performance data, may be able to justify optimizing your bandwidth or purchasing acceleration hardware or whatever the scenario is you're trying to support. Metrics can really tell the story. And as well, talking about language packs. When do you decide to add a language pack? What are the things you use to determine that? Well, are you waiting for someone from the business to tell you you need to support the Spanish language pack, as an example? You need to understand what's going on so that you can justify it. And gathering those metrics is really important. And guess what? Every time a browser connects to IIS, the web server, it's providing the installed operating system as well as what version is installed. So you can actually get this data right out of the IIS logs, but there's tools that unlock this and make it much, much easier. Adoption, huge on ROI. Was SharePoint a successful deployment? How do you answer that question? Well, a lot of it really does, answering that question has a lot to do with engagement. Not just because they are on there, but in terms of, are they liking stuff? Are they rating things? Are they using it? Are they adding files? Not just because they have to, but because they want to. And it's kind of changing things from being reactive to proactive in terms of creating an engagement platform and creating that water cooler. And a lot of that does relate to social, but that's because social can be a good indicator of adoption. And a lot of it is, well, establishing benchmarks and driving that forward. And that is a great question. What does good adoption of SharePoint look like? What are your thoughts on that? You can definitely tweet us your thoughts on what does good SharePoint adoption look like, and how do you measure that? How do you get your arms around that? Bjorn, you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So having to do with what Joel's been speaking about up till now, here we can see an example from within Cardlog, how we can slice and dice all the data by, in this case, by geography, but also slice and dice it by different departments or other attributes that we have about our users, so that we can actually tackle each individual department or region and see exactly how their adoption is taking place. Oftentimes we see that an organization will tackle adoption as a whole, whereas after using an analytics product, they'll find out that Department A is actually adopting very well, and we should invest more time in adoption and training in these departments that aren't adopting as quickly. Another thing that you can see here is also see real-time analytics. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see who is online report. So we can see at this moment who's interacting, who's engaging with our portal and so forth. So not only the ability to view the metrics, to slice and dice them by the different attributes, but also see all this data in real time.
So I know a lot of you came here to understand what's new in SharePoint 2013. And I started a Twitter conversation even earlier and had some dialogue with Eric Harlan from Microsoft. And if you look at that conversation, you'll notice that Eric talks about how abysmal it is and how it really wasn't a very big investment area for SharePoint 2013. At the same time, I commented and said, yeah, it's really sad to see how analytics in SharePoint 2013 has been sacrificed in terms of being able to put the emphasis on search. And search is really where a lot of that's gone. And I want to kind of show you what are some of the things you can expect out of 2013. So what's new? There's a lot of new Excel-based reports. I think a lot of it was, let's put the control back in the hands of the users. And so they give you kind of basic Excel spreadsheets that you can just open up and see a little chart. And if you want to munge the data, you want to combine it, slice and dice it, the idea was, let's just hand it up to you in an Excel report. And you'll see some of these screenshots how that works. Search with these new catalog entries. The catalog was a big investment where you can pivot based on popularity, meaning show me the most popular items with X, this metadata, this column. Being able to show most popular items is a really big scenario, and being able to get usage built into search and moving analytics out of being its own separate thing, it's really been more and more integrated into search. Usage equals search analytics. I mean, it's amazing how close those things are together. There's some new search-driven web parts, being able to show what's popular as an example. Item usage reports. Now, it's better to, the picture is 1,000 words. Let me show you some of these pictures. This is what you get. So in terms of 2010 versus 2013, you were used to the big analytics interface. I would say big, but the analytics interface that would allow you to do top browsers, top operating systems, and all those. Now you can get a stream of hits versus unique users. And unique users is something that's calculated daily. And if you want to pivot on that, you want to add anything into that, it's your prerogative. This is available for both subsites, so site level, the SP Web and the SP site, both the site collection and the sites. So that's kind of new in terms of being able to not just it only be for site collection administrators. Now there is some basic analytics for site administrators that aren't site collection administrators. So that may be exciting for some of the users who don't have anything today. Search. So this is, when you see this interface, you'll notice, yes, this is Office 365. And right out of the box, and this is consistent with what you get on-premise as well, you can see top queries by day, top queries by month. You simply click that. It opens up in Excel and gives you, it might be 3 headings and a bunch of data. What you're looking at here is the abandoned queries by day report. And what I've done, and what I often do, is I'll subscribe to these search reports where I get abandoned queries, and then I send them to, what I'll do is I'll highlight certain things that I feel like should not be abandoned very high, and send them over to the ops guys. In 2010, that means, hey, go add best bets for these things. In 2013, it means we need to go dig in on search and find out why we don't have any correlation between what people are searching for and what they're finding. There's a lot of improvements in search in relation to that. But if people are not finding what they're looking for, there are definitely ways of being able to adjust things and being able to address a lot of these reports. Another investment by SharePoint was in the audit reporting, content viewing, so you can understand what people individually are viewing within the site, what's being modified, what's being deleted, and this even goes into much more detail. The auditing reports are much better than they were even previously, and that's where the investment was. Now, if there's one thing that I think that people who are going from 2010 to 2013 need to do, it's they need to step back from just the pure upgrade of the environment, and they need to start saying, how can we build a design that's good for all of top to bottom, all operating systems, all mobile devices, all mobile OS, the bring your own device strategies. And a lot of this comes with responsive web design. Responsive web design isn't just a cliche term. It's a revolution in its own in terms of ways of designing an interface so that it works good on a desktop, on an iPad, on a tablet, on a phone, Android versus iOS, and so on, so that you can have a good experience. And a lot of that is understanding what are the screen resolution sizes. And you can see just by this example that there is no one-size-fits-all screen resolution. You can see even the most common one is only 17%, nearly 18%. So if we can design an interface that works for everybody, that's great. And even with my consulting company, I work for Salient 6, one of the things we've been focusing on is making sure that when we design for responsive web design. We want people to have a good experience no matter what browser they're using, what operating system, and so on. And there's a lot of great best practices out in the industry. The SharePoint 2013, when it was designed, it was still too forward-thinking, apparently. It was too much to be able to design 2013 out of the box for all devices. But that being said, it is a pretty decent experience. So don't get me wrong. So that's definitely something to do some homework on.
Great.
And Yaron.
Yeah, so here on the slide, a few things that we can see. So Joel spent some time talking about search, and of course a key for SharePoint 2013, and some of the metrics you can get out of the box with search. And what we're showing here is a few of the advanced capabilities that the Cardiolog Analytics product can provide. Here, for example, we can see a few steps that user is taking within their journey in the site, and we can also understand how that works with search. So after someone searches for a specific search term, what are their next steps? Are they clicking on one of the results? Are they after that going back and searching again for the same keyword because they couldn't find the content? So what we can see is that in Cardiolog we can actually build these different funnels to understand not only what folks are searching for or where they're searching for, but what are the additional steps after taking that action, in this case, search. So we can also see that here very clearly. And Joel, we're doing all right with time as well.
Great, great. That's good to know, because I definitely want to save some time for Q&A. A few good screenshots again. This is the search-driven content web part, and the idea that you can actually select popular items, which generates a very nice-looking web part where you can both preview your results and be able to, you can see all the usage events that are on built into it that you can take advantage of when you're actually building that interface. So that's actually a really rich thing. In terms of the developer experience, in terms of the designer kind of user experience of working with that, there's a lot of rich data in there that it just hasn't been exposed per se in nice reports inside of SharePoint. In the ribbon, you'll notice there's a new most popular items that you can click on that gives you basically a search-based view of recent and what's going on. In Office 365, you can see your storage. This is an admin interface to Office 365 where you can see your quota and manage sharing and so on. So there's some basic analytics in Office 365. Now let me kind of wrap things up for myself. 2013, yes, the usage reports themselves are worse. They need some help. Popularity and usage in search is for the better. It's actually some of those investments in terms of time they made. Practical metrics are there, but they're harder to get. They're throwing Excel at you to try and get you to munch them yourself. Have an action plan for getting metrics and establishing benchmarks. And as well, this is just being honest, many customers who care about creating action-based reporting and benchmarking are going to end up investing in third-party products or starting with free product that's out there and building on that.
Perfect. So thanks, Bill, for a great intro into the world of analytics and how we can make them actionable. I want to move on to a few more items here. So the key idea that we had here at InTalk is how can we make better analytics for SharePoint beyond what's out of the box for 2010, 2013, Office 365. And our key idea is to start out with monitoring how people are using the environment, as Joel mentioned, and then moving to a next step, an evolution, which is to engage with users, and not only collect items about them, but also be able to engage with them, ask them what they need, and then based on those first two items, monitoring and engagement, go back and enhance and optimize. And of course, Joel, as you mentioned, make sure these things are actionable, being able to optimize, enhance, and improve our portal based on these different actions. So beyond web analytics, another item that you can see here included in the CardLog platform is this voice of customer engagement tool where we can actually include on-page surveys to really get more feedback from our users and understand what their needs are, what's working for them in SharePoint, what's not, and also going one step beyond just SharePoint, really understanding what their needs are within the organization. So of course I'll show you in a demonstration how we can use these pop-up tools and they'll simply appear like this within the environment. But what I want to do now is quickly show you a short demonstration of CardLog to give you some more analytics capabilities to your SharePoint environments. And I'll start out here in the Analysis Center of CardLog. What you can see here is that we can display the entire tree structure for the SharePoint environment. So I can monitor as many farms as you have, whether if it's MOS 2010, 2013, and so forth. And what we can do here is create these quick, easy-to-use ad hoc reports. If I just click on an item, like the press releases subsite, I'll get an instant dashboard for the area that we selected. And again, that could be for the farm level, for the site, and we can drill all the way down to specific list library or list item, like a page, document, announcement, or wiki, to see exactly what's been going on with that item. Let's search for a list item, like a document or a page. I search for download, and you can see two pages with the word download in them. We'll sync our Explorer on that page, because of course in large environments, it might be hard to find the area or the document we're searching for here in the tree structure. We'll click on the download page and open up an instant dashboard for this specific web page. All right, so here for this page, you can see some of the previous pages people came from, where they went to next step, different meters about this page, the individual users who access this page, and so forth. So the idea here is to provide a robust search analytics engine and also be able to have it very easy to use as opposed to viewing each metric individually within SharePoint. Here we provide a lot more metrics, and you can see all the metrics within a single dashboard. I'll hop over into the Report Center briefly just to show you a few more examples for dashboards here. All right, so you can see an overview of our site, the map overlay Joel showed earlier. We can see the actual users accessing our site, how many times, and trends over time. Joel mentioned the importance of understanding browsers and operating systems, so we can share dashboards about that as well. Here we can see at the top a chart of our operating system that are being used and browsers to learn how folks are engaging with our environment. But more than that, at the bottom, you can see the actual list of users who are accessing our environment with a mobile device. So here, of course, you can see a mixture of authenticated users, and you can see their actual user names. I can see here, for example, that Katie had 66 views to our site using a mobile device. And we can also track anonymous users. If this is a mixture of an intranet, extranet, and public-facing website, we can do so as well. So very easy to create these dashboards, view the metrics we want. At the top here, also very easy to share the data with our colleagues. We can create distribution lists if you want them to go out periodically, once every day, week, or month to the users. Or we can also create a web part for SharePoint. So of course we can display all of the data you see here right within the SharePoint environment, right within the SharePoint page, to make sure that our users can view all this data through SharePoint as well. And of course we can export to CSV for Excel if you want to see the raw data or create a PDF out of it. So these are a few examples for some of the dashboards that we can provide. Again, it's very easy, as you saw, just to click on any area and get an instant dashboard. Moving on, as we spoke about the evolution from just collecting metrics to being able to engage with users, I'll jump over to our SharePoint 2010 demo site. And here, to scroll up and down this page at the bottom right-hand side, you can see a survey that appears within the page. And again, this is based off feedback we got from our customers who said that analytics is great, provides a lot of good information, but they can't get all the feedback they want from their users. And so we simply added this surveying tool to our analytics product. I'll show you a few more examples here. So this is to give you an idea of how you can view the feedback that you're getting from users. So again, we can have both multiple choice questions, and here you can see the answers to each one of those multiple choice options. And then down below, we can also have open text-based options. So here you can see we have some fans from our intranet, some folks saying that it's a great intranet, that they love the intranet. But the idea, again, is to really be able to engage with users in real time as they browse the SharePoint portal. So here another example for one of these surveys, the two kinds of questions, either open text-based answers or multiple choice. And the idea is that we can really engage with users. So here we're asking, were you able to find the content you're looking for? If someone clicks on yes, then that's great. We're happy to hear that. But if you select no, we can actually ask for more details as to what you are not able to find. And again, because this tool is built for SharePoint, you can define for each survey which group of users will view it, or which department, region, or other AD attributes who will view the survey. And there are many actions you can specify after someone submits the survey. So they can either see a thank you page, or we can open up a new page for them. So again, if I select no here, we can have a new tab open in the browser, which will display our support page or our search page. And then the idea is to really engage with the user and help them find the content that they're looking for, help make sure that their experience within SharePoint is good, and also to be able to collect feedback from them to understand what we need to do, what changes we need to make to improve and optimize our SharePoint environment. One additional item in the demo that I'd like to share before we get to Q&A is how we can further engage with users. And the two items that I want to show you here in optimization is the segments tool. And here in segments, we can actually define more attributes for your users besides what you have in Active Directory. So here, for example, we can define these segments based on the actual browser or operating system that the user is using. And then, for example, slice and dice our data, as I mentioned earlier, by these different segments. So let's say if you want to see page views or users who are accessing the portal through a specific browser or device, or if we go back to the survey I showed you a moment ago, we can have a specific survey appear only for users who are browsing on a specific device. So if there's something you want to share with Firefox users, we can have that survey appear only for users from Firefox. If you want to ask them a question about their experience using the portal with Firefox, same thing. We can define that each survey will appear for a specific group of users, and we can also go back and slice and dice all of our web analytics data by these users. And then the last area that I'd like to share with you here is called behavioral targeting. And this is really the ultimate part of user engagement. And so, as you know, in many times, the information within the SharePoint portal is usually the same for all users. And we can't really provide the data that each user might want or might be useful for those users. And so what we can do here is actually create targeted content for users based on who they are and where they're coming from. So as an example, on this home page, we can show a welcome for everyone from our marketing team, from the head of marketing, and a welcome for head of sales for everyone from our sales team. So the idea is to really be able to engage with our users based on who they are, what they're doing on the site, and how they're interacting with our website. So that was just a brief demonstration of some of the insights we can gain from a tool like Cardiolog with the goal of really enhancing and optimizing our SharePoint environment. We have about 6 or 7 minutes till the end of the hour until our time is up. So go ahead and jump into some of your questions. Of course, if you have any questions after this webinar, you can contact us by visiting our website or emailing us, as you can see on the screen currently. And also, as mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a recording to everyone who signed up and a copy of the slide deck, so you can use that as well. All right, so a few questions here. Let's take a look. The first question from Alan is asking, can you target a survey to a particular page, such as to ask, did you find the content on that specific page? Sure. So you can definitely define for each survey that you create exactly where it will appear within SharePoint, and also who will appear for. So you can definitely have a survey that's going to appear on your search results page, and will display a question asking, were you able to find the content you were looking for? That's definitely possible in the tool. Next question is from Matt, and Matt is asking, how do you handle social, likes, comments, and shares? Great question, Matt. So with using a tool like Cardiolog, you can track not only who's been viewing content, but also all the interactions within the environment. So even if you're using tools, the more social tools like blogs, where you can add comments, or things like microblogging and other social features, we can also track not only who's been viewing that content, but who's been liking, who's been commenting, and who's been uploading content and sharing content with others as well. So we can definitely provide you those more social metrics by using Cardiolog. Next question here is from Silvio. Silvio is asking, can we create KPIs and reports based on SharePoint list libraries and columns? So with Cardilog, the answer is yes. As I showed in the demo, you can filter any dashboard by a specific area within SharePoint. So you can take, for example, just a specific site you want to report on, or in the case of your question, Silvio, take a specific library to see exactly who's been accessing that library, what's most popular in that library, and so forth. So definitely can show that insight, again, all the way from the farm level, all the way down the site level, and through the all the way down to the list item, such as a document, page, wiki, or announcement.
Let me speak as well to a potentially more generic question of if he's trying to use KPIs to build metrics based on data that's in SharePoint. Unfortunately, if the data is not in the list, then the KPIs aren't going to have access to it. Now, there is some extensibility to the KPIs where if you could get it into something that the KPIs could connect to, then potentially you could. But basically it needs to either be in the list or need to be accessible to the KPI list, like with the BCS connection.
Okay, great. Some great insight there. So also how we can do that using some of the additional tools within SharePoint out of the box. Let's see, the next question here from Wade is asking, is Cardilog certified, approved for Office 365? And if not, what are the plans to become certified? So the answer to that is yes. One of the things we try to emphasize here with Cardilog is because this tool is built for SharePoint, we make sure that it can run on all platforms or all versions of SharePoint. So all the way from 2003 through 2013, and also things like Office 365, we are certified, and you should be able to find us on the Office App Store as well. So we definitely are certified with those cloud products. Let's take a look. Maybe we have time for one more question. All right. And so, Joe, maybe you can start out with this question. Jacobus is asking, what level of integration is there with third-party tools like NewsGator, for example? So maybe you can shed some light on if there's any out-of-the-box capabilities with SharePoint for those third-party tools.
So things like NewsGator, it would be Chrome around the page. So the metrics you would get with SharePoint out of the box, you would be able to see, just because NewsGator is on a community page, for example, in 2010, you would still be able to get those metrics of what browser the user is using and so on. It wouldn't interfere with what SharePoint's collecting, but if you're talking about gathering metrics beyond, like in terms of how many communities has a person joined, obviously SharePoint won't have those metrics, but maybe there's some scenarios that Intlock could speak to.
Sure. So yeah, absolutely. So Jacob was really, as Joel's mentioned, SharePoint out of the box will be able to capture some metrics as to the engagement with NewsGator. But I think one of the things that the Cardilog customers are doing is taking that one step forward to not only see who's viewed some kind of tool within NewsGator, but also how many comments each person has added, how many likes, and things of that sort. So I think we have the ability with this third-party product Cardilog to give you more details than what you could find with SharePoint out of the box. I know we didn't have time to answer all of your questions. I see there are a few others here. We'll make sure to email everyone the answers to your questions that we didn't have time for. Of course, if there are any other questions over the next few days, you can feel free to contact us if you want more information about how this product can help with your environment and how you can use these portals to take action in your environment. You can feel free to contact us. For now, I want to thank everyone for joining, and thank you, Joel, for taking the time today.
Yeah, I wanted to mention as well, I'll definitely be blogging about a lot of what I talked about here in relation to what's new in SharePoint 2013. I'll be planning a blog post on that, and as well we'll be linking to the place to be able to download the slides just in case anybody has any problems.
Okay, perfect. So you'll be able to get the link to the recording. If you don't get that via email, then through Joel's blog. And you can get all the details from there. Of course, we'd be happy if you want to comment on the post there. We'd be happy to start a discussion there as well. So we'll get all that information to everyone who participated. But for now, thank you all for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Yaron.
Thank you, Joel. Bye-bye.